Hey all you Martians, I hope you guys are doing well. Today we will be discussing the overlap between OCD and ADHD. I just want to remind everyone real quick, I do have dyslexia and a slight speech impediment, so if I don't sound exactly professional, I do apologize. But without further ado, let's get into it. The International OCD Foundation. From the experts. OCD and ADHD dual diagnosis, misdiagnosis, and cognitive cost of obsession. Both obsessive compulsive disorder and attention deficit hyperactive disorder are considered fairly common and serious disorders. However, ADHD and OCD are notably different in terms of brain activity and clinical presentation. Individuals with ADHD may exhibit inattention, lack of impulse control, and risky behaviors. Generally speaking, people with OCD tend to demonstrate a more inhibited temperament and tend to avoid risky or potentially harmful situations. The similarities between OCD and ADHD are limited to only which part of the brain is affected. Patients with OCD exhibit significantly increased activity in a certain part of the brain, meaning this part of the brain is overactive in people with OCD, while patients with ADHD exhibit decreased activity in this part of the brain, meaning this part of the brain is less active in people with ADHD. This begs the question, can one person be both impulsive and careful, be both a risk taker and avoid risk, and exhibit opposite patterns of brain activity at the same time? As a secondary question, if this is indeed possible, how can we account for the significant decrease in reported comorbidity rates in adults? These two questions are the focus of our research into the association between ADHD and OCD. In order to answer the first question, we examine our hypotenuse that different mechanisms in OCD and ADHD may result in similar cognitive impairments. This hypotenuse is in line with other research suggesting that very different disorders are characterized by impairment in executive function. Across conditions, trait and state anxiety has been associated with cognitive impairments. Thus, we have proposed an executive overload model of OCD. The executive overload model suggests, in general, anxiety has been known to put a strain on executive systems. We argue that obsessions may be similar to anxiety in regards to their associated cognitive cost. Okay, so it's like a computer. If you have too many tabs open, it's running slow and you can't do much. So if you have too many obsessions and obsessive thoughts going on at once, you have a really hard time paying attention. This process has indeed been observed in patients undergoing OCD treatment where, in conjunction with clinical improvement, CBT resulted in decreased abnormal brain activity and improvement in cognitive symptoms. For people with OCD, an increase in reported obsessive-compulsive thoughts and behaviors also meant a decrease in performance of executive function tests, such as the ability to suppress responses. However, with ADHD groups, more OC symptoms, and it just is OC, symptoms were actually correlated with better performance in tests and executive functions. In a secondary study, we noted that ADHD symptoms were correlated between childhood and adulthood in ADHD and control groups, but not within OCD groups. The second study suggests that some attention problems in children and adolescents may actually stem from OCD symptoms and not ADHD, and are not ADHD related. Review of literature suggests the two major findings are clearly observable. Research suggests that 1 out of 5 children with OCD has co-occurring ADHD. Only 1 out of 12 adults with OCD has ADHD. So what happens to half the children with OCD who initially are diagnosed with ADHD as well? Does it disappear in adulthood? The answer appears to be yes and no. It appears that pre-adolescent children with OCD go through a slower slower process of brain development in which their pattern of brain activity and associated symptoms may appear to fit the description of ADHD. However, through adolescence, this arrested development begins to abate as ADHD-like symptoms dissipate and the brain activity changes to fit the adult patterns observed in adults with OCD. Furthermore, we suggest that a full-blown dual diagnosis of ADHD and OCD in adults is in fact very rare. So you and me are so lucky, Silver. And it's usually associated with a mitigating condition, notably chronic tic disorder or Tourette syndrome. Implications of practice. In light of potential pitfalls of misdiagnosis, clinicians ought to note the presence and or absence of clinical significant levels of impulsivity and risk-taking. The second diagnostic marker is the ability to perform accurate and repetitive rituals governed by very specific and complex rules, something that people with ADHD will generally struggle with. In fact, attention to detail and the ability to strictly follow attention-demanding tasks are characteristic impairments in ADHD and are considered clinical diagnostic criteria. That was a mouthful. Sorry, I'm also kind of thirsty. I hope that helped you guys understand OCD and ADHD a little better. Unfortunately, I am diagnosed with both, as I am also diagnosed with Tourette's disorder. I know, I'm a walking DSM-5. But anyways, if you have OCD and ADHD, I want you not to despair, because you can still seek help for both, and you can still recover from both. But I do not suggest taking ADHD medicine without taking medicine for OCD, because I've done that before and it's a freaking nightmare. Anyways, I love you guys. I hope you're all doing well. Bye-bye.